Now for global business updates, Rotus Oddiri joins us. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning, Dr. Abati. Good morning, Ayo. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, everybody out there. I'll begin Asian markets. Korea and Japan have reopened. Of course, China, Hong Kong still observing the lunar holidays. Japan, the Nikkei 225, spiking today over 3%. It briefly touched 38,000 points, which is like a 34-year high. There's been some positive sentiments towards Japanese equities, especially with the Bank of Japan still, deviating from practically everybody else with its loose monetary policy. So that's what's happening in the Asian markets. U.S. markets, I think the S&P 500, touching a new 52-week high. But we look at what's out today, what you're expecting later today. U.S. January CPI was 3.4% year on year in December. I think the markets are expecting it to fall below 3%. So I think they're expecting a print of 2.9%. That's for the US. For the UK, I think this data is already out. It must have come out as I was walking in. But February labor report, they're going to be looking at wage data, unemployment numbers, and so on in the UK. That's also going to influence where monetary policy goes. In France, we're expecting a fourth quarter 2023 unemployment. Of course, you've seen the massive farmer strikes with tractors blocking the roads in France as they're calling for more government support. And then in Germany, we're expecting the February ZEW economic sentiment, which is a survey of business owners and so on about where things are going over in Germany. On the UK, with respect to wages, this came out yesterday ahead of the labor data today. So these are the private sector forecast, the forecast for pay increases. Basically, for private sector, they're looking at a 4% rate of increase as opposed to 5% last year. Public sector, 3% from 5%. So what that essentially means is that they are expecting that the rate at which pay in the private sector and public sector is increasing, is going to decelerate. The ramification of that is you possibly have less wage inflation pressure, which could, spur the Bank of England to possibly cut rates down the line. That's in the UK. I think we go to the EU now, and the European Union. There's some draft legislation I think Bloomberg got their hands on. They are targeting firms for aiding Russia, Chinese firms. Looks like there are new trade restrictions. Three Chinese firms. They haven't been named, but they're apparently listed. They've got listings in Hong Kong, Serbia, India, and Turkey. It needs the backing of all EU members in order for this targeting to take place. What will happen is they won't trade with them. They will be restricted. But the EU doesn't have complete harmony at this time. So again, it's just draft legislation. I think some of it actually bleeds into what's been going on with electric vehicles and the charge that China has been subsidizing vehicles and pumping the European markets with them. From there we go to I think either the Super Bowl or no, Michael Jackson, my idol, who passed away 15. Who's everybody's idol? Sony bought, this actually was weekend news, I didn't get to this yesterday, but they've purchased about half of his music catalog. They paid about $600 million for it, and essentially valuing his catalog at $1.2 billion. And for somebody who's been dead for about 15 years now, it speaks to the value of Michael Jackson's music. In recent years, Tina Turner, before she passed, sold her catalog. David Bowie did so before he passed, Paul Simon, a number of other artists. But the difference here is that the Michael Jackson estate still retains some form of control over the catalog. There's apparently a very successful Broadway musical of Michael Jackson's life that has been playing now and has made a lot of money. They still have creative control, as opposed to other artists that have sold the entire rights back to the labels and no longer, they basically just got paid off for them. Very interesting strategy on Sony and Columbia Music and all these other record labels. Maybe they want to take advantage of owning those for the purposes of streaming music and so on and so forth, considering where things are going. We talked about preliminary numbers for viewership ratings for the Super Bowl. This is preliminary. We're going to get final numbers from Nielsen later. Yeah, you were right. 123 million people across linear television watching that Super Bowl. Super Bowl. Incredible stuff. You see, the thing is, it's very interesting. I think the NFL football still has, and American culture, a strong hold. Yes, despite linear TV for other entertainment categories falling, it's still pretty. You'll see it's 115 million in 2020. 2023. Again, it was the same Kansas City Chiefs. They beat the Philadelphia Eagles last year. This year, they beat the San Francisco 49ers. Some are saying it could be a Taylor Swift bump. I don't think so. I think the numbers have just been, pretty big, either way you slice it. I think we come to Nigeria now, and yesterday on the NGX, we saw Access Holdings stock falling about 6.2%. It led the losers in the banks. I mean, a number of other banks lost as well, but I mean, year to date, it's still up 5.1%, but I think, investors may be a bit worried. They want to see the leadership void closed as far as Access is concerned in terms of leadership. And in that regard, I think management, they made an announcement pretty quickly yesterday. They've appointed as acting group CEO Bolaji Agbede. Board decision was made yesterday, subject to approval from the CBN. She's got a pretty strong profile. She has about, if you look at her profile, she's got about 30 plus years of banking and consulting experience. She has a bachelor's degree from the University of Lagos, I think, in mathematics and statistics. I mean, anytime I meet somebody who studied mathematics and statistics as their core bachelor's degree, I bow down for those folks. And then she's also Chartered Institute of Management of the UK. I believe she's a member there as well. So she's there in acting. Okay, yeah, so there's our profile there for folks that are interested in acting capacity. That is our... Kenya also, I think, is going back to the Eurobond. I think they floated a Eurobond, but it got about 10%, which is pretty high for Kenya. That's our news for
So, I was saying, that's the culture of, Super Bowl and how they've been able to harness, that same power. You're seeing 123 million viewers.
That's a lot.
I think that should be one of, Super Bowl consistently ranked very high as one of the highest sporting events in history.
In the globe, yeah.
In the globe, because when you look at it, I think another fight that ranks high, maybe it's Rumble in the Jungle, I got close to 25 million viewers or 26 million viewers, if my memory serves me right. But that's to show you the star power. And that's why you see the advert rates are so high and highly competitive. So we too must be able to look within and see the power of media, how we can harness it with sport. For Michael Jackson, I'm really very excited. Apart from Michael Jackson being a great artist, one thing Michael Jackson did when he was alive, he was the first artist that started buying the catalog of other artists.
The Beatles.
That was how he made money.
Yeah.
He has a lot of catalog. That was how he made, because when you look at it, him and Prince knew that the record labels were fleecing them off. Hence the problem Prince had with the record label.
Yeah.
But Michael Jackson was wise enough. They started buying catalog of other artists. So in his repertoire, he has a lot. And definitely...
His children are set for life.
Yeah, he became richer even in death.
Yeah.
So he was able to harness that catalog, and he understands the music, the business of music.
Excellent point. Michael Jackson was a smart businessman.
He was a smart businessman. And he used to buy catalog of the other artists. He would buy this, he would buy that. So him having this in his repertoire, I mean, definitely, I'm sure he also bought, little record labels that had, very extreme catalogs and everything. Because after all is said and done, you see why Nigeria does not make money from the music business, and why we don't see the trickle-down effect of all the money them Davido are making is because of catalog. I bet you, go and ask people like Davido, they don't own their catalogs.
How much do you think Fela's catalog would be worth? I wonder about things like that,
It will be expansive, but the question is, does Fela own his catalog?
Right.
Or Decca Records?
Yeah.
That should be the question we should ask. Yeah. That's why even when you look at all them, Sunday Owedi, Sunday
those classics,
most of those catalogs are probably owned by EMI.
Right.
So the question we should ask is, have we fully been able to understand the business of music publishing? Because to sing as an artist is different.
Right.
Then understanding the business of music publishing is another ball game entirely.
Facts. True.
All right, just about Super Bowl. I mean, one of the things that's come up, great numbers there, and that's why they can actually have big stars. Revenue in terms of advertising, but also in terms of keeping their revenue, not pay those big stars that perform at halftime.
In fact, people don't know that.
Yeah, people don't know that. People think, it's a great opportunity. So Usher, who hasn't been in mainstream music for a while, would see a resurrection to his career following the Super Bowl. At some point, they actually mold the idea idea of asking the artists to pay
them to appear
on there. So that just speaks to building a great platform, and then you begin to dictate, you know, in terms of revenue generation and how much you can expand revenue generation and even making it a platform. I hope we can. I mean, obviously, whenever we talk about big things like this in the United States of America, we always want to see how we can replicate maybe a continent-wide event like this, or perhaps even in Nigeria. There are a number of lessons to be learned from that, especially how we built brands. There are some award shows, competition. I don't know if there's any sports competition on the African continent that can compare to that to any extent. But in terms of monetizing, you know, and branding in such a way that it becomes even more than the actual event, which is, you know, the Super Bowl, it's become a cultural thing. There have been a number of analyses done about how even billionaires, it's a statement thing to be able to attend and just go there, hire private jets, and also all the other industries affected by that. So I think it's interesting to see that how. So we talked about music. America is cashing out this season. We talked about just the Grammys a few days back. The Oscars are coming up. We have the Super Bowl. So there are lots of things, diversification in terms of even entertainment and sports, and that's something to talk about. But now looking at Access Holdings and Miss Bolaji Agbede, like you mentioned, over 30 years experience in the banking sector. She started off with GT Bank and then went on to a business consulting firm, JKG, where she was MD, and then come back to Access Bank, one of the founding directors when they moved to Holdco of Access Holdings. And it's interesting because yesterday, when we had Mr. Tedu Peter's side and we talked about succession planning, he had postulated that perhaps the person who would step into the shoes, even in an acting capacity, would come from within. Right. That would be that it would be someone who had been in the organization for a while, and this is what we've seen with Ms. Agbede. I'd like to see what her appointment would do for their stocks, because, of course, a number of investors would be watching to see if this is the right choice that has been made. If you read her resume, if you look at what she's done, it looks like a good fit. Solid. But again, she's just in a transitional process until they have a substantive GCO.
Indeed.
Okay. US CPI report expected today, inflation figures, and there have been a lot of permutations. This same week, we're expecting January data on producer price index, also retail sales. But the purpose of all of this in the U.S. will be to see how the mind of the Federal Reserve will work. That's right. Whether the rate cuts, you know, that is being expected by Wall Street and investors will come, you know, quicker than expected. That's the main issue there. Now, as for Michael Jackson, this is about legacy, the power of culture. And of course, you know that Michael Jackson was not just a musician. Right. He said he's a businessman. In fact, he was a phenomenon.
Indeed.
And this is what happens when they say, I think it was Horace that said, life is short, art is long.
Indeed.
In other words, you know, the thing about the arts, whether you are talking about Da Vinci, or you are talking about Mozart, or you are talking about Chopin, is that art tends to outlive. And we've seen within the American system and other jurisdictions where, you know, the business is iconized, even, you know, to immortalize the artist. But what lessons can we learn here in Nigeria? Nigerian musicians are still at the level where they are fighting, they are struggling over copyright issues.
Indeed.
This has been a major source of concern for PMAN, particularly the Performing Musicians Association of Nigeria. Copyright issues. Yeah. So when our musicians die, no matter how prominent or successful they are, you know, you don't remember. Nobody even can trace some of those records. It's only through individual efforts that we have seen people, you know, putting Fela's works together, putting the works of Haruna Shola together, putting the works of Batili Alake, you know, and all these musicians, Oliver Dokokwe, you know, Rex Lawson, all those people. And these were great musicians who made their contributions. Maybe there are lessons that the creative industry in Nigeria can learn from that example. Well, you were talking about Super Bowl, and you try to minimize the influence of Taylor Swift. The record for being, you know, is traced to the Apollo 2 landing on the moon in 1969, about 125 to 150 million viewership. But Super Bowl has become big advertising space, big viewership. Even the NFL series is big business. You know, I was saying yesterday how the Ocean Valley area, you know, gained a lot in terms of business. But Taylor Swift added to it with our relationship with Travis. The CBS and all the channels, they were focusing on Taylor Swift as if it was Taylor Swift. And then after, when she kissed the boyfriend, I mean, that made front pages. So the Taylor Swift economy, you know, is a major factor here. I don't downplay it.
For sure.
Tomorrow is Valentine's Day. I close with this.
Dr. Abati, for bringing that up.
Because this should be of special interest to you and Rufai. In the UK, delivery riders are saying they are protesting because of poor pay. In the US, Uber, Lyft, you know, they are also protesting. But I haven't seen any activity here. So you should know, the two of you. So what is the plan for tomorrow?
There's no plan.
Rufai and...
well, we have a
Rotus.
We have a Valentine's Day report, so we'll play a report.
You have a
report.
Okay, but you have personal plans too.
Yes, of course. Well, I have plans. Rufai,
Don't just give us economic reports.
Other reports. Don't worry, yes, there will be updates.
Okay, we await both the public and private reports. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Rotus.
So much.
And we look forward to tomorrow. Let's see your touch. Dr. Abati has gone ahead of us and just given us a touch of red this morning.
Of course.
So we're looking forward to
I have an option in the matter.